Hi, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to set up a motion detecting passive infrared sensor. This is what it looks like. I've got 3 different sensors all doing the same thing, and I'm going to install one of these so that when you walk in the room it will activate the light to turn on, and you can set how long it stays on for, and then it can automatically turn the lights off. I'll just show you these 3 PIRs. I'll then show you the principle of how you connect it, and then I'll do the installation. Right, the first thing you may notice is these have different wattages. As you can see, this one says 500 watts. It's a small one. This says 1.2 kilowatts or 1200 watts, and this says 1200 watts. You can also see that the size of them is also different. So I'll show you them quickly. Right, so over here is a small one, and as you can see, you'll have to drill into your ceiling. Here is a saw. You choose the saw size. As you can see, if I put this over it, this will be too big. Something like this would work. Then you attach it to the fitting, you drill into your ceiling, which I'm still going to show, and then you install this into your ceiling. And what you'll notice is all 3 of them have this dome where it's got a lens in order for the sensor to pick up motion in the entire room. Well, it depends how big your room is. Now, some of these have more than one sensor, and I'll even open it up and show you. Here's one over here, and as you can see, it's got 3 infrared sensors. So it can pick up movement from 3 different directions. And if you're wondering what this is called an LDR. It's a light-dependent resistor. And why that's there is on the front, you can set the lux. And the lux is the brightness of the room, or whether there's maybe some sun coming into that room, and do you still want the sensor to work even in the daytime. And you can even set this to be very low, which means that the sensor will only work when the room is fairly dark. But then obviously it also depends on where you mount this, because if the light shines directly onto the sensor, that's obviously also going to affect that. Now, I'm going to be installing this in an office, and I'm not worried about the lux because I want it to work no matter what. So if somebody walks into that office, the light must come on. So in this case, I will turn the lux to maximum. So this means that this will turn on irrespective of the ambient brightness already present in the room. And the next setting here says sensitivity. Now, not all of these PIRs have that, and what it does is it sets the sensitivity level of these sensors. So if you set it to high, it means that small movements will activate the PIR, whereas if you set it to low, you'll have to do bigger movements in order to activate the PIR, or maybe let me say more movements. Sometimes with the sensitivity, it will count the amount of movements before it triggers the relay to close and switch on the light. And the next setting here is time. How long do you want the light to stay on for? Now, all of these PIRs are slightly different. While the principle is the same, you might find that this one only has a on time for say 7 minutes, while this one here might have 30 minutes, while this one here might only have 10 minutes. So just because this one is a 7-minute on time doesn't mean all of these have the same on time. You'll have to check the specifications of the unit which you have. Now, what you will notice is this one here had a sensitivity adjustment, while this one here does not. It just has lux and time. On this one, you're just going to set at what ambient brightness in the room the sensor can still operate at, while this setting over here is just how long the light must stay on for. And if I show you this PIR over here, you only have lux and time, and there you can see there's only one small infrared sensor there. It's still got the LDR to sense the ambient brightness. So there you can see slightly different, but the principle remains the same. Now, just having a look at this, you can see that one needs to drill into the ceiling and put this into the ceiling. And on this one, you can see you've got a terminal block, and it says live, neutral, and output. There's an arrow there saying output, and what that means is you'll have to connect your live wire that would have gone to your light, and then the neutral wire that would have gone to your light, although, and I will show it to you shortly, the neutral is shared. So the neutral is still going to go to your light, but the PIR sensor also needs current to operate, because if I open this, you'll have a look inside and you'll see there's a little circuit in here. And there's a relay. Remember, the point of this is it's going to sense movement, and when the movement is sensed, it's going to close that relay, allowing the current to flow from the live coming in to the live going out. And I will explain that to you shortly. So that's all it is. There's the PIR sensing side, and here is the relay control and obviously power supply. So because this needs power, this also needs to have a live and a neutral connected to it. And that is why it has 3 wires. Now, if you have a look at this one's a little bit different because the wires are actually here. So you'll just have to use a terminal block or a crimper to set this up. So same principle applies here. You've got a live, which happens to be the brown, and then you've got a neutral. In this case, happens to be the blue, and then the live going out happens to be the red. And there you can see you've got these flaps, spring flaps, to hold it in place in your ceiling. This one is a bit bigger, and the reason for it is, as you can see, you can aim it, which is quite nice if you want to pick up motion in only a certain part of the room. Now, just having a look at the specifications here printed at the back, you can see that it says 1200 watt max, and that says incandescent. And then if you look here, it says 300 watts max, and that is for fluorescent or energy saving globes. And the reason being is there is a capacitive effect with a lot of fluorescent lights and an inductive effect on some of them. And what happens is it causes a stored charge, which means that when the relay activates, there's quite a lot of inrush current. And also when the relay opens, it has to deal with stored energy in the lighting system. And that is why the wattage has been derated somewhat, while the incandescent or old-fashioned lights is more resistive in nature, and it doesn't have that stored inductive energy or capacitive energy, and therefore you can see the rating, the 1200 watts, is much higher. If you're going to use this with regular fluorescent lights, you'll have to use the lower wattage, which is 300 watts. Now in my installation, I'm below 200 watts, and I am using energy saving globes, so therefore I'll be looking at the lower wattage there of 300 watts. Right, I have a diagram here just to explain the wiring principles. Now this is the setup before. You would have had your mains, your live and neutral, feeding your light fitting. So you would have had two wires there, possibly an earth. Now we're not going to make any changes to the earth wires. So what would have happened in the previous installation, you would have had your live coming in, going through the light bulb, and then the neutral returning. You may have even had a switch, maybe your light switch, and we're not making any changes to that. You'll still be able to switch on your light with the light switch. Now in the new installation with the sensor installed, it'll go as follows. You're still going to have your live and neutral. Now, as I said, the PIR needs energy to work, so it needs a live and a neutral. Then the live coming out will only be switched on when the PIR notices motion. When there's motion, the PIR will activate the relay, allowing current to flow from this live to this live. So current will then flow through the light and return via the neutral. So the PIR is really just a controlled switch. All it is doing is controlling when the live must be connected to the live of the light fitting. So you'll probably still have your light switch in your wall, and that won't be affected. You can also disconnect the PIR by switching the switch to the off position, which therefore deactivates the PIR. But in this case, what you could do now is you can leave this switch permanently closed, and the PIR now takes the place of the switch in terms of controlling the light. Yes, the light switch will still operate and disconnect the PIR, but the point of the PIR is it now becomes automatic, and you don't have to switch on and off. And when people leave the room for half an hour, the PIR will automatically turn off the light, opening this live wire and no longer allowing current to flow to and fro via the live wire and exiting via the neutral. Right, before I get into the roof, I'm going to quickly show you the practical wiring layout. Now in the roof, you'll probably find something like this. You'll probably find you've got a live and a neutral and an earth coming through your ceiling to your light. So here, for example, is a light. There's the live, the brown, and there's the neutral. So those two would have been connected together in the ceiling. You might also find your wire looks like this. Okay, so the brown is usually your live, the blue is usually your neutral, and that would have been connected to your light. So what do you need to do now that you're adding the PIR motion detector? Now in this example, you can see I've got three wires. Now here, the brown is the live coming from your supply, and the red is the wire that is going to be switched on when there's motion. So immediately you can see that the red must now go to the brown of your light. So it would have been like this. Okay, so these two would have been connected together. I'm just showing it to you practically. Therefore, when there's motion, current will flow and go to your light. This happens to just be an LED light. Now, the blue is neutral. So all the neutrals actually go together. They must all be connected together. So if you have a look, this is the neutral coming in from your DB board going to the neutral of your light, also to the neutral of your PIR. And then you're just left with the live for the PIR, which then would have been connected from your DB board light circuit like that. Now you might find your PIR has terminal blocks rather than wires, so all you'll do is you'll wire it with the terminal block, and I'll quickly explain it to you. So there it says live coming in. Now the live coming in from your DB board is this red, So that would have gone in there just like that. And then it says neutral. Now, there we go, put the neutral in there. But at this point, you want to also put the neutral from your light. So they share the neutral there. So that would go in there. Right, and now all you need to do is connect the live for your light. So there it says output live. So now all I do is I wire that into my light. Right, so there you have it. The live comes in there, both the neutrals are shared, and there the output from the PIR goes to your light. Can you see that the PIR is really just acting as a switch, connecting that live to that live when there's motion. Right, so now it's time to go and do the installation in the ceiling. Now, oftentimes when you open your lights in the ceiling, you'll find that there might be additional wires. I'll show you that when I open the light fitting in the ceiling. Right, so this is my lab office and it's got a few lights here, which is not really a common design. Now, what you're looking at are two LED tubes. Now, that's the main light in this office, and all the lights are connected to each other, meaning that when you switch these lights on, all of them do come on. So what I need to do is just locate the mains wires. That's the live and the neutral coming in, feeding this whole light circuit. And as I remember, it is just above this long LED tube setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these tubes and locate the live and the neutral, and then I'm going to drill a hole to wire the PIR, insert in the roof, and then obviously to wire it. Just make sure you've switched everything off. Always work with the electricity off. Right, now as you can see, there is the hole going right into the ceiling, and all I need to do now is locate a spot where I'm going to install the PIR. Now, oftentimes there are rafters in the ceiling, and if you could, get someone to go into the ceiling and let them tap or even drill a hole through where you can put your PIR so that you don't drill straight into a rafter, because then you won't be able to insert your PIR. Right, now I've pulled the light fitting down, and in this case you can see I've got a brown wire, two black wires, and this copper. Now the first thing is the copper is the earth. So you'll leave that in place. The copper should be connected directly to the chassis of your fitting, any metal parts. So there we go, earth in place. Now why I've got two black wires is because the neutral is shared to another circuit. So I'm just going to leave that as is. And if I show you where these wires go, it's probably out of the view. They're actually joined together with a terminal block anyway. So it's just that sometimes when you wire lights, it's almost like you daisy chain them. So this isn't because there's two lights here. It's just because the person who wired this dropped both neutrals here and joined them at the light, and then sends it to another light fitting because that light also needs a neutral. Now here is the live. So there we go. I've got my live, I've got a neutral. Remember, the neutral is going to go to the PIR and the live is going to go to the PIR, and then the output from the PIR is going to go to the light fittings. Right, so now I need to install the PIR, but remember that I'm not installing the PIR right here. I'm going to install the PIR a little bit to the side, and now it's time for me to drill a hole. If you haven't got access into the roof, what you can do is get one of these cameras which connects to your smartphone, and then you can see on the screen what's in the ceiling and where the rafters are. You also don't want to drill into any wires. And lastly, what you can do is if you walk outside, you might be lucky, you might see the rafters on the side of the wall. Now, in this case, I can see it, and there's the ceiling line. And that means that between these two rafters, I could potentially drill. Obviously, first prize is get into the ceiling, open these roof tiles and check, because there are sometimes plumbing pipes and things like that that run on the ceiling. But I'm just giving you another tip that you may find useful. So in my case, I can then draw an imaginary line into the room and say, all right, between there and there, I know that there is an open space. So that means that if I was going to drill here, I would be drilling straight into a rafter, and then I won't be able to install the PIR. But if I was drilling here, as you can see, there is potentially open space here. Again, you can't confirm without using the camera or putting your finger there and actually seeing, maybe opening a roof tile and just peeking in and seeing what's in the way. But using this method at least tells you whereabout you will be working. So I know that I'll be working between these two rafters. Right, now in this case, if I was installing the small one, as you can see, the hole is big enough and I can install it. Now in my case, I didn't have a hole saw large enough for the bigger PIR, so I had to use a jigsaw. So in your case, this will probably be a lot simpler. It's not that common to have pine ceilings. Now in most cases, the ceiling is runner board, which is much easier. Just use a knife and you cut the shape that you want to cut out of the ceiling. If you're worrying about scuffs and that on the wood, that's not a problem. You can just put clear varnish, or you can just put some oil, or a better scenario is actually to put a little bit of oil on the jigsaw surface so it doesn't scuff the ceiling. Right, so all I need to do now is thread the wire through there to there, or it's probably easier to go from there and catch it here. Now, here's the challenge. Firstly, you'll need 3 wires. Remember, live, neutral. So you can use wires like this. Best not to have loose wires like this in the ceiling. You could put it in conduit or sprag like that. That's an option. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this wire and I'm going to feed it through here and catch it on this side. And as I feed it, as you can see, I'm bending it so that it goes in this direction. And this is a multi-core cable. So now I can open it and show you. And I'm just going to put a gland on it for now. Right, so there you can see I've got an earth wire, which I'm not going to use, but there you can see I've got live, neutral, and the black, which in this case is going to be the live out. So there you can see I've got multiple cores there. And because I'm going to have to join these wires, I'm just going to use a little junction box here. And you can see that that can fit in the ceiling. Right, now this came with these bare wires, so I'm just going to put some insulation tape around them. You don't want vermin in the roof trying to eat these cables. Right, I just put a little bit of sprag here. All right, so I've just wired it up. There's the brown to the brown, so that's going to be my incoming live. There's my neutral, so there's the blue to the blue. That's going to give the sensor power, the live and the neutral. Then from the sensor, I've got the red wire going out, which is going to my black. So in this case, this black is now going to be the live for the lights. If you want to put a red insulation to signify that this is now live, you're welcome. All right, so I'll push that in. If you want to get this out, you can just pull it out. If you want to get rid of some of those scuffs and that, I just take some furniture polish and just clean the wood. Right, so now it's time to put the light fitting back, and then I'll just wire it up to the live and the neutral over here. Right, so these are the neutrals. As I said, there's a few lights here and all the neutrals are joined together. Right, so these are the wires coming in from the PIR. I've put a red tape on this one because this is a black wire, but it's actually a live. Then here is the brown wire. This is the live for the PIR to give the PIR the live voltage. And then the blue happens to actually be the neutral for the PIR. So here we go. I'm just going to open it up a bit. Now, this is my neutral. Now, as you can see here, I've got a clump of neutrals which I've now opened up. And why there are so many is because, remember, all the neutrals are shared. And all I need to do is join this neutral to the group. Now, when the wires look like this, you should use a ferrule and a crimper. You should actually use a crimping tool and crimp it all together. But somebody has borrowed my crimping tool. I'm just going to have to use a terminal block. Right, so those are all the neutrals. Now the lives. So here's the live coming from the DB board. Now it was connected to these two lives over here and this one here. Remember, I've got a few lights here. So these are all the light circuits, 1, 2, and 3. But this is the live coming in from the DB board. So all I need to do is join the live that feeds the PIR to the live from the light circuit from the DB board. Right, so there's the live coming from the DB board going to the PIR live. Now, this is the output from the PIR, which is now able to supply the light circuit. So all I need to do is find all the lives for all the lights that I want to switch on now, keeping in mind the maximum power mustn't exceed 300 watts. So here we go. I've got all my 3 lives. So what you have now is all the neutrals together, the live coming from the DB board joined to the live that feeds the PIR. When the PIR activates, we allows current to flow on this wire, which I've now taped as red. It was the black wire, and there you can see it's going to the reds of all the lights that I want to switch on. So now I just have to put that back neatly and close up here. Right, the lights are off. There you can see the motion detector is installed in the ceiling, and now when I walk into the room, it will activate the lights to switch on. Right, there you have it, and thanks for watching, and cheers.